Let's continue with our discussion of Discovered, Not Designed, by Sean McClure. Today is the sixth part of our interpretation. In this section, we continue our critique of reductionist thinking. I need to add a few words from outside the system once again. McClure's criticism of reductionism is quite radical. If you read the original book directly, you might feel he goes too far. After all, reductionism has brought enormous progress to human society. Modern science is built on it, and science has completely transformed the world. If someone today eats the wrong thing and gets poisoned, how could you possibly solve that quickly without reductionist methods? Yes, absolutely. That's why, throughout my explanations, I deliberately softened McClure's tone. I don't want you to come away with the impression that McClure is calling for a wholesale rejection of reductionism. We obviously need both holism and reductionism. Still, there is value in speaking forcefully. We truly have entered an era in which we must confront complex systems head-on, and we are beginning to discover holistic ways of solving problems. And the biggest turning point here is that humanity has created AI. AI is the first genuinely complex system created by humans. Its emergence means that we can now solve previously unsolvable problems by building complex systems. Doesn't that alone demonstrate the power of holism? McClure's tone in the book can make it sound as if reductionism has reached a dead end. But I personally don't see it that way. We've said before that physics has hit a wall, yet I believe science as a whole is still moving forward, and that AI will help propel it further. So my suggestion is this. Treat holism as a problem-solving approach. It will give you a calmer mindset, but it is also a decisive new way of thinking. We don't need to reject the past. But we should accept that the paradigm of scientific progress is changing. The fundamental flaw of reductionism is its attempt to forcibly extract clear causal relationships from complex systems. Sometimes we do this deliberately, but more often we do it unconsciously. Deep down, we default to assuming that everything must have a clear cause. Imagine this. There is a fountain pen that once belonged to Einstein. Perhaps even the very pen he used while working out general relativity. You've just purchased it at auction for a high price, and now you plan to write something with it. What will you write? You'll almost certainly feel that whatever you write with this pen will be a bit smarter than usual. But if you think about it, that's completely irrational. Einstein wasn't smart because of the pen, and the pen doesn't carry some mystical residue of his intelligence. The feeling arises because you've implicitly assumed some mysterious causal link between the pen and Einstein's genius. Another example. A newly opened tea house on a street corner advertises aggressively, claiming its secret recipe has been passed down for generations and was even endorsed by the Qianlong Emperor of the Qing dynasty. You hear the story, buy a cup of tea, and feel that it really does taste special. But what could possibly be special about it? It's not expensive, all the ingredients come from modern supply chains, and there's no mysterious substance involved. You find it special only because you've accepted an implied causal narrative. Centuries of tradition must produce extraordinary flavor. McClure gives another example. Genius. When we call people like Einstein, Mozart, or Newton geniuses, we're again assuming that extraordinary achievements must have extraordinary causal explanations. That these people possessed some rare, exceptional innate quality others lack. But if you actually examine the history of science and art, you'll find that no major discovery or great work emerged out of nowhere. They were all products of their time. When Newton invented calculus, Leibniz was working on the same problem. Newton's inspiration for gravity came from his contemporary Robert Hooke. Einstein could propose special relativity because experiments had already accumulated evidence for the constancy of the speed of light. He could propose general relativity because differential geometry happened to be available as a mathematical tool at the time. And there were countless other factors. We can never enumerate them all, or definitively answer why it was Einstein. Strictly speaking, it was an emergence within a complex system. Belief in the aura of the pen, the mystical recipe of the tea house, or the innate genius behind great achievements. All of these reflect the same impulse. Forcing causality onto systems where no single clear cause exists. Reductionism predisposes us to assume that every outcome must have a dominant factor. A classic manifestation of belief in dominant causes is the obsession with finding a playbook for success. If someone succeeds, there must be a clear reason, and that reason must be hidden in the path they took. So why not just copy their success path? That might work for travel tips or bureaucratic procedures. But it fails completely when dealing with major endeavors in a complex world. If you could time travel back into the historical moment and inhabit the circumstances of those successful people, you'd discover that they had no clear plan at all. The so-called paths were constructed retroactively by later observers. You wouldn't seriously claim that to become the next Einstein, you should go work at a patent office after college. That would be pure cargo cult thinking. Einstein happened to stand at a historical junction. Physics was full of unresolved tensions, modern mathematics had just provided new tools, experimental evidence was undermining old frameworks, his patent office job inspired thought experiments about elevators, and countless other variables. Taken together, these don't amount to luck so much as contingent convergence. Contingency matters more than routes. Contingency is not random good fortune, nor mystical fate. It includes environment, timing, resources, competitors, users, technological conditions, social atmosphere, and more. It refers to the moment when a complex system reaches maturity and an emergence occurs. Effort matters. But effort is only one part of the conditions for emergence. But you can't teach students to wait for contingency, like Jiangxia fishing patiently for fate. You have to teach something. So you teach playbooks. Take writing as an example. There are countless writing courses today that teach you how to write novels or essays, down to how the first paragraph should hook the reader, how the second should pivot, how the ending should elevate the theme and tie everything together. They analyze structures and narrative techniques from classic works, as if mastering these templates would allow you to produce great writing yourself. That's nonsense. Great works do have structure, but the structure emerges. It is not designed in advance. Critics may later point out foreshadowing here, a climax there, a moment of resolution somewhere else. But writers didn't draft blueprints beforehand and then fill in the boxes. They were driven by feelings, writing forward guided by emotion and intuition. The structure revealed itself over time. If you forcibly impose someone else's structure, you end up saying things you never intended to say just to satisfy the template. You get stuck, feel disconnected, and suffer. Because you're not expressing emotion, you're imitating a formula. Naturally, the result feels unnatural, unconvincing, and unsuccessful. That said, writing is not devoid of skill. It is a real craft. You can learn narrative techniques, absorb a sense of structure, rhythm, tension, restraint, and negative space from great works. When used fluently, these can make you a better writer. But this is borrowing, not obeying. You steal inspiration, not copy blueprints. You must train your own neural network through imitation and trial and error, gradually forming your own style, and ultimately follow intuition, responding to emotional momentum. McClure criticizes contemporary science and engineering for lacking philosophy, arguing that this limits how far they can go. The key issue is that many scientists fail to recognize that each discipline studies only one facet, a projection of nature, not nature itself. McClure compares nature to a three-dimensional object. Shine a light from one angle, and you get a shadow on the ground. That shadow is understandable, measurable, and modelable, but it is only one aspect of the object. Change the lighting angle, and the shadow changes shape. No matter how many times you do this, you're always seeing projections, never the object itself. In this sense, modern science studies shadows. To be clear, no one claims physics explains all of nature or economics explains all human behavior. We know theories are limited, but limited theories can still explain a great deal. Here's a thought experiment that helps clarify this. Suppose, purely hypothetically, that God exists and personally arranges events in the world. Could you guess the principles by which he distributes fortune and misfortune? The simplest theory would be good is rewarded and evil punished. But that's wishful thinking. In reality, many good people suffer while many bad people thrive. We need a more complex theory. Theologians have explored this before. Recently, I asked O3 to construct a more plausible model. After thinking it through, it proposed that God would simultaneously consider at least 6 principles. 1. Moral causality. Good is rewarded, evil punished. 2. Randomness. God is indifferent to some small events and allows chance. 3. Soul shaping. Suffering is sometimes assigned to strengthen character. 4. Narrative tension. Like a screenwriter, God introduces setbacks to enrich the story. 5. Evolutionary pressure. Disasters may be allowed to spur adaptation and innovation. 6. Information gain. Without disruption, nothing new is learned. 3 suggested that God would weigh these objectives with shifting weights we cannot know. This is an excellent illustration of understanding complex systems indirectly. Those who believe purely in moral causality aren't wrong. They simply aren't seeing the full set of principles. Each principle captures one projection. Together, they guide action better than ignorance. Again, this is just a thought experiment. McClure insists every theory is merely a projection of a complex world, but projections can still be useful. So what does holism actually give us, if it only criticizes reductionism? The answer already exists: AI. The capabilities of large language models were not designed. Researchers did not explicitly program them to translate, write poetry, or code. These abilities, understanding, reasoning, abstraction, induction, coordination, emerged. They grew out of massive data through self-adjustment, evolution, compression, and generalization. And this is only the beginning. Many people hope AI will help invent new drugs and cure diseases. But McClure argues that inventing one drug for one disease is still fundamentally reductionist. Could AI bring us something genuinely holistic instead? Perhaps it could guide us toward entirely new ways of living, health systems not centered on disease and treatment, innovation systems based on systemic coordination rather than isolated breakthroughs. Beyond AI, we've already created smaller holistic breakthroughs. AlphaEvolve, which we discussed last week, used evolutionary learning to discover superior solutions to scientific problems. Evolutionary learning is holism in its purest form. There are real-world breakthroughs too. In 2020, scientists used evolutionary algorithms to first discover, and then physically grow a sub-millimeter scale xenobot in the lab. It is a product of laboratory evolution. But it's not quite alive, since it cannot reproduce. Nor is it quite a robot, since it has no mechanical parts and is made entirely of cells. Its components are frog skin cells and heart muscle cells. Skin cells provide structure, heart cells contract autonomously as a power source. Through trial and error, scientists aim to teach these systems to move, swim, push particles, carry payloads, and cooperate in groups. Some religious observers might say, "You are doing God's work." Yes, that is the ambition of holism. In a sense, complex systems are actually simpler than simple systems. You don't need to compute every internal generative process. Those calculations are impossible anyway. Instead, you can experiment externally and create entirely new things. This is a paradigm shift, from analysis to generation. I don't believe reductionist scaling laws have reached their limit, but holistic scaling laws are only just beginning to unfold. That's it for today's content. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
If you feel there is value in this, please like, subscribe to this channel, and leave your thoughts or suggestions in the comments section. Let's grow together and read more good books.